8 everyday things astronauts can't do in space. Astronauts make a lot of sacrifices when they venture off of Earth. Microgravity has its own unique set of regulations that regulate many aspects of daily life, in addition to the risks of space flight and the time spent away from family. These 8 activities are not possible for astronauts in space. Astronauts can't cry the same in space as they do on Earth. No matter how much people may laugh in space, crying is a very different emotion without gravity. Chris Hadfield, a Canadian astronaut, replied when asked if he could cry in space. "Does crying work in space? Tears come from your eyes, but they remain in a liquid ball. They do in fact hurt a little, therefore space doesn't cry." According to The Atlantic, tears in space can freeze into a huge clump that may break free of your eyes if an astronaut doesn't wipe the water away. You can see a ball of your tears floating about in space. They can't consume common items like bread and soda. According to the Franklin Institute, many popular foods are too difficult to transport to eat in space. Bread, for example, can result in crumbs that can damage equipment or accidentally get inhaled by astronauts. Therefore, according to NASA, tortillas have been used since the 1980s. When it comes to beverages, carbonated drinks are off the table because they aren't buoyant in a weightless environment. Vicky Cloris, subsystem manager for shuttle and ISS food systems at Johnson Space Center and program manager for NASA FTCSC, told NASA, "Carbonated drinks currently don't make the trip because the carbonation and soda will not separate in microgravity. Salt and pepper have also been banned for their ability to float away and potentially damage equipment or get in astronauts' mouths, ears, or nose. Thankfully, NASA has developed liquid versions as a substitute." According to Space.com, the only people ever to enjoy bread in space were the astronauts on NASA's 1965 Gemini 3 mission. John Young smuggled a corned beef sandwich on board. Astronauts can't write with regular pens. If you've ever attempted to write with a pen held in the incorrect position, you know it doesn't work. To flow, the ink needs gravity. In the beginning, US and Russian astronauts both relied on mechanical pencils in space, claims Scientific American. Then in 1965, the Fisher Pen Company patented a pen whose cartridge is pressurized with nitrogen. That pressure pushes the ink toward the tip, allowing the pen to work even when upside down, in extreme temperatures or underwater. The pens are still used today. They can't coordinate their sleep schedule with the rising and setting of the sun. On the International Space Station, astronauts can experience up to 16 sunsets in a 24-hour day, so their sleep schedules can't rely on light patterns. To prepare for this, astronauts go through intensive sleep training before they launch, according to Space.com. Drinking alcohol is not allowed in space. Despite the fact that sherry was previously suggested in 1972 as a component of astronauts' meals, it never made it to the space station due to the public anger over astronauts drinking in space, which necessitated the necessity for an alcohol ban. Daniel G. Hewitt, spokesperson for NASA's Johnson Space Center, told the BBC alcohol is not permitted on board of the International Space Station for consumption, but Russian cosmonauts are apparently allowed to consume cognac for immune health. They can't enjoy a hot shower. Astronauts must make the most effective use of all available resources while in space, especially water, which is expensive to deliver due to its weight. Instead of showers, astronauts use water distilled from air humidity, urine, dental hygiene, and hand cleaning, among other things, to fill their sponge baths. On the ISS, according to NASA, Water is gathered from humidity in the air and from human waste to be turned back into purified drinking water. There also isn't a particularly efficient way to wash clothes, so astronauts just repeat outfits. Astronauts can taste as well while in space. NASA reports that astronauts can start to lose their sense of taste while in space. Once back on Earth, they say food tastes much stronger. One reason for this might be that in space, fluids in the body move differently because of the lack of gravity. So rather than being needed in the legs, fluid in the body goes to the head, where it can stuff up the nasal passages. Another hypothesis is that the strong odors in the cabin of the ISS dull the body's sense of smell, which in turn dulls the sense of taste. Pooping in space is very difficult. Number 2 is more challenging because you're trying to hit a pretty small target. Peggy Whitson, who spent a record 665 days in space, previously told Business Insider, "The bathroom, if you could call it that, also has no door, just a curtain, and astronauts must strap in so they don't float away." The lack of gravity can cause some unsavory complications, since even pieces of human waste can float away. Here's how astronaut Barry Wilmore once described it. Using a fish metaphor, there was a very rare occasion when sometimes a product gets away, and the term was brown trout. So you have to recoral your brown trout, and that can be kind of humorous. You go, this stuff doesn't happen on Earth.